Welcome to Living Out Loud with your host, Jess Phillips, where we talk all things addictions, codependency, relationships, and the good, bad, and ugly in between. Hi, everybody. I'm officially back. It's been, 3 weeks, I think, since I have recorded one of these, and I have missed it very dearly. I was away on vacation, and then the day after coming back from vacation, sick as a dog. Sick as a dog for, almost a week. And I don't know about anybody else, but when I'm out of my routine, it is so hard to get back into a routine. Even if I know that routine is going to make me feel great and I thrive off of it and it's a recipe that I know that works, there's something about stopping, pausing, losing motivation that just makes getting back on the horse seem so scary and such a bigger deal than it actually is. So when I was on vacation, the first couple of days are great for me. And I don't know, some people vacation very well. I don't think I vacation that well. I'm good for a couple of days. I relax, I soak in the sun, I explore. But then I'm such a creature of habit and a creature of routine that I find I get a little bit kind of bored and restless when I'm not creating or talking to people or recording. Anyway, so that went on a little bit too long. And when I got back, being sick is never fun. It's very hard to be creative when you're sick, that's for sure. And I think being sick for me is even tougher because I feel so guilty, like I should be doing all of these things. And your body's just like, nope, you're not doing any of those things. You're sitting on the couch. So anyways, needless to say, I feel better. I'm back on here. I'm excited to be on here. And I really just want to talk about that kind of ugly beast of feeling stagnated or feeling unmotivated. I gave my friend a call a couple of days ago, and I was just saying to her, like, I don't know what's going on. I feel like I've lost this drive and I've lost everything that I was building before. And she was like, can you relax? Like, you are sick. Why is it so difficult to just give yourself permission for being sick and then kind of climbing back out of that hole? And she's right. Sometimes it takes a few more days after to just kind of get back into your routine and get back onto that to-do list. And I just really wanted to talk about the places that my mind goes when I'm kind of left to my own devices. When I stopped, doing the things I was doing or working as much or recording these, and then to get back into it, my mind was telling me things like, is it such a good idea? Do people like it? Are people listening? Maybe you shouldn't. And I'm like, whoa. Like, where is any of this coming from? And I started to realize that not only did that happen with this podcast, but that has happened in so many other areas of my life. It's like the gym. If I stop going to the gym, even if I know going to the gym, like the evidence is there, going to the gym makes me feel, I don't go in there feeling great. Sometimes I have to drag myself there. But once I do a good workout, I leave there. It's like a guarantee that I'm going to leave there feeling better than when I walked in. And I know this to be true. So why is it that when I take a break from the gym, my mind tells me like, oh, you don't really need to go. You're going to have to kind of get strong all over again. And it becomes this like shitty thing in my mind, which is so scary because it's actually such a positive thing. So when I take this break, I just make it into such a bigger deal than it actually is. And I've been talking to quite a few people who are experiencing this lately, whether it's, doing our taxes or, checking something off the list that's been in the back of our minds for God knows how long. And it's almost like the pain of not doing it is way worse than just taking the hour or two or whatever it's going to take to just sit down and do it. It's like this podcast. It's like, oh my God, what am I going to talk about? Oh my God, what if it's not a good idea? Oh my blah, 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 blah. That's exhausting. It's way more tiring for me to kind of spin that hamster wheel than it is to just sit down, press record, and do what I love to do. 5 minutes in, I'm already like, oh God, I miss doing this. So really kind of starting to examine what our minds are telling us versus what we actually have to do. And I think that's why I love the art of coaching so much, because the biggest difference, and this is not to say I don't love therapy. I think therapy is extremely necessary for many people, but coaching is so action oriented because a person like me loves to get lost in the story. I will tell you the story of why I can't do it, why it's not happening, why I'm not motivated, blah, 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 rather than just doing it. And sometimes it's just like, here's the goal, however small, you're going to walk around the block today, you're going to get back and you're going to tell me how the walk was. And putting these small little mini steps into action is so rewarding for me because I've set the goal. I know what it is. I told myself today, like, there is no way that you are letting this day go by without this recording. Rather than kind of just sitting in the shouldn't I do it? Because it's really torturous. It's really torturous. And the one major theme that I can think of that comes up is fear. There's some type of fear for people surrounding the task at hand not to do it. What's the fear behind doing the taxes? What's the fear behind calling that person that you know you need to call, that you haven't spoke to, that you want to call? What's really stopping us, And really coming down to what are the values underneath that I want to live by? One of the values that I pride myself on and I make sure is something that comes with me on a daily basis now is the art of consistency. And why is consistency important? Why is showing up, however small each day? It doesn't have to be this, big glorious thing. It's just these small little steps in the direction that I want to go is so important for me. And the first place that I really learned that art of consistency was with my sobriety. Up to date, it's been the one thing that I have stayed consistent with. And through that level of consistency, it's allowed me other things. Other doors, other avenues have opened because I've stopped drinking, stopped using drugs, right? Had I decided to, at 5 years, saying, okay, I've been consistent enough with this is time for, this to go out the window and start drinking again, I'm going to lose everything else. So knowing that, okay, if I'm doing the work each day to protect this area of my life, what is it awarding me in all kinds of different areas? And I think there's a big catch-22 to that because emotionally, I don't want to stay consistent. I think people who are big feelers, who are prone to be a little bit more hypersensitive, maybe more on the insecure side, temperamental, maybe that deal with anger, tend to make decisions based on how they feel that day. And oh boy, was that me in the past. And still can be me today if I want to choose to have a type of day like that. But I would make decisions based on how I felt in the moment. And that is the opposite of consistency for me. Because if I waited for the motivation to do the things that I do each day, it's not coming. I'd still be on the couch. I'd still be in bed. Right? Because it's the actions that I take that actually create the energy of motivation for me. Once I've talked myself into going for a walk, it's 10 minutes into the walk that I feel like, oh God, am I happy to be out here. the endorphins are going, the dopamine's hitting, music's going, a podcast is playing, whatever it is, and I immediately feel better. So you'd really think that it wouldn't be such a fight to do all of these things that I have to do in my day-to-day. But this art of kind of doing the action despite how I feel, I think has been one of my biggest saving graces. And it's something that I really encourage other people to do, because there's some people, the truth is there's some people that just don't attach as much emotion to things as some other people do. And I'm a very big emotional person. Everything has an emotional meaning behind it, when sometimes it just is what it is. Like sometimes just cleaning your place is just cleaning your place. Sometimes just working is just working, but it's got to have some deep rooted meaning. And I make it into this very big deal, and I got to build myself up to do it. Whereas some people are like, I'm just going to do it, and remain a little bit more neutral about it. So I don't think that I'm ever going to get to this place where I'm going to feel totally neutral with my emotions, nor do I want to be that person, because I actually enjoy the fact that I have these big feelings now, because it awards me to do what I do. But I definitely can't make decisions based on that anymore. And another very tricky thing about being emotional, or maybe people who have addictive tendencies, is that the art of consistency can get very boring. And if there's one thing addicts don't like, is boring. Even people who are in recovery from addiction, it's still very exciting to start something new. And I remember in the past, starting yoga or starting gym or starting a new job or whatever it was. It was the start that was so exciting, right? And all of this effort would go into the building, starting. It's all fresh. It's all new. It's all shiny. And then what? And then comes in the consistency. It's great to start at the gym, but you gotta go every second day to maintain whatever it is that you want to build. It's the same as work. It's great to build companies, but then it's going to level off at some point where you're going to have to show up every day, and you're going to have to plug away, and it might not feel super exciting every day. And I think for me, that might be very common information to a lot of people, but for somebody like me, it was a bit shocking, because I don't like to feel bored. I don't like things to feel normal. I don't like it to feel mundane. I want it spicy. I want it salty every day, and that's just not life. And I started to realize that actually my character, my sense of self was actually developing through that consistency. And the one major thing that I can relate it to is the amount of times that I thought, oh my dear God, how am I going to stay sober? I'm so lonely. I miss drinking with my friends. So many Friday nights that I'm just at Blockbuster. Well, I just really dated myself. At Blockbuster, just feeling oh God, I'm going to be such a loser. Nothing's going to happen in my life. And really having to push through those moments in order to build what I've built, or to have what I have now. Because if I had drank over any of those emotions, it's game over for me. Then there's no consistency. Then there's no building at all, And that trickles into every area of my life today. If I don't show up with my clients consistent, we're going to have a big problem. My message needs to stay the same. If I don't eat consistently well, right? If I'm eating based on my emotion that day, boy, that's going to get very messy, right? If I want to self-soothe with food based on if I'm feeling irritable or tired or lonely, there's no consistency in that lifestyle either, because, one day I'll be eating popcorn and hot dogs, and then, 3 days later it's going to be candy and whatever, right? I'm going to turn childlike if I get to kind of eat based on how I'm feeling that day. So And I think that's why there's so many stop-start diets out there. So many people share with me, I'm on this, I'm trying this, I'm trying this. It's all great, right? It's great that you're thinking about eating better and eating, I don't want to use the word cleaner, but eating healthier that suits your lifestyle and your body type and your energy level. But what happens is that we go on these kind of exciting starts, right? And people go grocery shopping and they're like, I bought all this keto food, or I bought all this type of food. And then what happens, right? 3 weeks later, it's rotting in your fridge because it's too big of a start. It's too big of a mission. I don't think that life works that way. It's not just this stop and start. I'm going to change everything in one day. It's these tiny, small, consistent choices that become a part of who you are. And that's been a huge lesson for me, especially in eating well and taking care of my health, because before it used to look like, oh my God, if I was binge eating or eating whatever I wanted, it would be like, okay, it's the weekend. Get everything that you want, everything that you've been craving, stuff it in a short amount of time. It's Sunday night, you have till midnight, like all of these very sick rules around food and around what's going in, that it was like the health goal was never there. It was still this exciting, like, how much can I possibly get in before I have to stop again? And I don't know how well that works long term. It's really this idea of like, okay, what's my body asking for? Not ignoring that, but also asking myself, is what I'm about to order conducive to my health goals? Is eating a pizza tonight gonna help me feel the way that I want to feel Monday morning? And talking to myself more in that fashion than this almost kind of punitive stop and start and yo-yo dieting. So it's really staying consistent during the week with healthy food that doesn't make me only feel physically good, but mentally well also. Because that's been a huge part of my recovery. Because you definitely, for anybody listening that's sober, the point of getting sober is not to feel like shit, right? Like the point of getting sober is not to pick up another vice and all of a sudden be, I don't know, whatever it is that we can get into, right? Because we're still numbing out. There's a very big difference between self-soothing and numbing out. And we can numb out with basically almost anything. So this idea of how consistent am I staying with diet, lifestyle, work, relationships, because it's those small little moments of truly doing the things that I sometimes don't want to do in the moment, or doing things that are really counterintuitive to how I'm feeling. Working out when you don't feel like working out. Finishing a project when you don't feel like finishing a project. Calling a friend when you really just want to hide under the covers and isolate. Connecting with a recovery group of whatever sorts when you really just want to stay home and have a pity party. Because there's really something to be said about the art of discipline and its correlation to your mental health. Because there's been times where there's been no discipline in my life, not a lot of responsibility, and I felt my worst. And once that started to change, once the responsibility increased and the discipline increased, it was like magic. It was like, oh, first of all, I don't really have time to feel as shitty as I felt before. Now I've got people counting on me. I've got places to be. And I'm not engaging in this destructive behavior anymore, because as good as something feels the first 5 minutes of me doing it, it usually doesn't feel good an hour later. And that can go for almost anything. So this art of not only starting these projects, but continuing the day in, day out, and not just starting and quitting. I was the queen of the start-stop. It was very exciting to start. And then when it wasn't meeting all of my needs or satisfying every part of me, which is never going to happen, I would quit. And quitting can be exciting too, right? Because it can really feed that ego and pump us up and say, oh, this wasn't for me anyways. Or dropping a relationship or dropping something before we give it a kind of fair chance is just another method of, running away, not looking at what we need to look at, or not giving us a fair shot to put in that small, uncomfortable work. So, this week was a huge lesson for me too, and really 3 weeks off of my regular routine. And being honest that these feelings of stagnation and almost falling into a trap of being inconsistent is not going to go away. It will always be there for me. I just have to be able to be consciously awake to what's happening and not fall into that trap. And it's fine to fall into the trap. I just hope that I fall into the trap for a week instead of, 6 months. Because, once you go down that rabbit hole and you've stopped doing the things that you need to do to feel good for a long period of time, it gets even harder to climb out of that hole. So now it's almost like I try to just give myself, whether it's a day permission, a week permission, but never letting myself stray so far that I need this huge intervention to get back on track. Because that's painful. That's really painful, So I try to keep people close now, be honest about how I'm feeling, share with other people. And that's the beautiful thing too. It's like, one day I'm down and a good friend of mine is up, and we help each other that way. And then the next day they're down and I'm feeling more up. It's always this kind of, it always balances out and equals out, because life is not about feeling great and feeling like a superstar every single day. Maybe for somebody, you're lucky, whoever you are, but for me, it's not the case. And I really have to remember my value of staying consistent despite how I feel. So this is very exciting now, part 2 to this podcast. As mentioned previously, I was going to start taking questions from my audience on Facebook and Instagram, anonymous questions, of course. And I had a really good one yesterday. And the question was, how do I learn how to self-soothe? And I loved that question because, like I mentioned before, there's a huge difference between self-soothing and numbing out. And numbing out, again, nothing wrong, nothing bad about it if that's been the strategy you've been using for a little while, because I did too. But if it's getting to the point where it's no longer serving you, maybe numbing out with food or shopping or, getting into relationship after relationship, it's okay. Maybe that's what you knew to do in the time to make yourself feel better. But there will come a time where that strategy won't work as well. So the art of self-soothing is really, how do we get from a state of being either hypervigilant, maybe really worked up, maybe you've had a conversation that really shook you up, maybe you had a fight in your relationship, a fight with family members. Basically, this idea that in the moment, the hamster wheel in your mind is spinning, your nervous system is a 15 on 10, and some people call it freaking out, some people call it obsessing, maybe your emotional state is super, super, super activated. How do we learn how to self-soothe in that moment? And I think there's numerous ways that you can learn and adopt new techniques around self-soothing. But if there's one thing that I know for sure, is that when your nervous system is that activated, in my experience, it's been very hard to stay in my own head in that moment and learn to self-soothe because I was too charged. So what I started to learn was that movement for me was the number one thing that started to help me in those moments. Because what happens is when I move my body, and it doesn't necessarily mean you have to go to the gym or go to some yoga class. I mean, I'm the queen of walking. I love walking because it serves my physical body, but also my mental health so well. And it calms me down better than anything. Because when I am that activated, I'm actually not even ready to talk to anybody because I'm too charged. So what I learned to do was by moving my feet, whether you're counting your steps, whether you put some music on, put a podcast on, maybe become more visual. You're looking at the sidewalk, you're looking at the cracks in the sidewalk, you're looking at people driving by. Maybe you're lucky enough to live by the water, walking in a trail. What starts to happen is that you become more hyper aware of your environment, and you have to pay attention to how you're walking and that you don't trip or bump into anybody. So what happens now is the focus is taken at least a little bit off of your thoughts. You might still be spinning, you might still be replaying the situation over in your head a million times. That's okay. At least it's going to be a little bit better by the physical movement. So that would be my first suggestion, is combining any type of physical movement. And maybe that might look like stretching for you. You know, I don't think stretching would calm me down in some of my most activating states, but hey, maybe for some people it will. So anything that takes the focus a little bit off of your mind at the time. So definitely physical activity would be my number one. Secondly, what I have learned is that there are things, smells, places that automatically soothe me. So I've met tons of people who hate taking baths. I love taking baths. And the bath to me always represents this very soothing place. And you can make it as soothing as possible. You know, go out and get yourself some fancy bubble bath or some Epsom salts, or put a couple of drops of essential oil in there. You know, oftentimes if I'm feeling really squirrely, I'll turn the lights off and put a candle on. Some people put spa music in the background, or maybe meditation. And that can be, you know, almost like a new Zen space for you, like a little Zen den in your home. Oftentimes people talk to me about their meditation corners. You know, they build this little spot in their home. They might have a cushion on the floor or some twinkle lights. I love twinkle lights. Everybody knows that I'm obsessed with plants. I have way too many plants in a very tiny condo. And in my plants, I go to the dollar store and I get these really cute twinkle lights, and I wrap them around all of the leaves, and I turn them on at night and put a candle on, and it really changes the energy in my own home, which I love. So, you know, maybe that can be something that you could think about doing in your place, or creating that little meditation spot. I've gone into some of my friends' homes and they've got the cutest meditation setups. I love it, you know. For me, I love meditating. I try to be as disciplined in my meditation practice in the morning as possible, but that is another thing that when I'm highly activated does not serve me in the moment, because I'm too stuck in my own head. So I love to meditate when I'm not feeling activated. Some people might enjoy it when they do feel activated. So far we've covered movement, going for a walk, baths, meditating. Cooking could be a huge one for someone. You know, that's another art of doing something physical, right? So you're not just stuck in your head. It's basically the idea of mindfulness. You have to become mindful of what you're cutting, what you're cooking in front of you, where then it takes away from some of the thoughts. And another, you know, huge aspect is having that, you know, maybe it's one person, maybe you're lucky enough to have a community of people, is having that safe person that you can call and talk to, that you know is going to be able to take you from a 15 on 10 to maybe a 6 on 10. I have quite a few of those people in my life. I'm very lucky, you know, and I know that I'm going to call them. They're not going to judge me. They're not going to be aggressive with me. They're going to know that I'm in an activated state. And it's okay to tell somebody that before you start the phone call. Hey, I'm feeling really revved up right now. I'm about to call you. I really need some patience and tolerance. Are you able to provide that for me? And people hopefully will honestly answer yes or no. Maybe they're super stressed out. Maybe they're activated. Because if they're activated and you're activated, don't call them. It's not going to work. It's going to be a huge ego battle at that time, So, putting out some feelers, or maybe you just know a couple of really calm people. I know a couple of really calm people who just, I don't know, maybe I've seen them activated 3 times in my life, whereas in the past I could be activated up to 3 times a week. So they oftentimes know what they're getting. They know the wrath of Jess when I used to call. And they were amazing at just taking me down. And I think the beauty of that is that person isn't emotionally involved in what you're going through, hopefully. So they have this objective perspective on the situation. And maybe they do share that with you, or maybe they just listen, because just listening to somebody is way more impactful than a lot of people think. Just holding that space for them to get out what they need to get out is a beautiful experience, because sometimes people don't need advice in the moment. They just need you to shut up and listen. And that took me a long time to learn, right? Especially being, stuck in codependency and having codependent friendships or relationships at the time, is you become a fixer and you want to fix. So sometimes, or most of the time, when somebody would call me with a problem, I automatically had to solve the problem, where that's not the truth and that's not the case. Some people just need you to listen and just be with them. I was talking to a friend the other day and I said, I would much rather you call me and come and hang out and us just not talk than you sit in your bed and just isolate. Right? Because I think the fear for a lot of people is, if I call them, then I'm going to have to be accountable to the advice that they give me, or this or that. And it becomes this very scary thing where it's like, we don't need that added pressure when we feel like shit. Sometimes it's just nice to go for a walk with someone or be with someone, especially after 2 years of staying home. I think being very gentle around the idea of advice giving and fortune telling and all of that, I really needed to take a cold, hard look at that, because oftentimes I don't know what's best for other people. I don't know what's best for them in the moment. I think rolling ideas around with somebody is one of the best things that you can do. Why I love coaching so much is being able to be that sounding board, because again, people usually know right from wrong. They know what's going on. Even if it was a huge fight and they know they were at fault, there's nothing positive that would come out of me being like, well, it's your fault. It's annoying. It's very annoying. People know already. They just need to talk through things and explore different options, or maybe talk about something else. That's another good one too. I have one friend that calls me every afternoon at the same time, and sometimes I just need him to distract me. And oh boy, do we laugh. Like, we laugh so hard that I'm crying and I don't even forget what was going on half an hour before I picked up the phone. So that's a beautiful one too, So to summarize, answering how to self-soothe, and I'm sure there's a million other ways, but I'm really addressing the self-soothing that's required when you're in a highly activated state, is really doing something that requires mental and physical focus. So we talked about walking, taking a bath, cooking, meditating, phoning a friend. And sometimes, there has also been times that I've felt that activated, that I've just needed to let it pass before reaching out to anyone. Because sometimes there's a sense of urgency that comes over you when you are feeling in that state that nobody would be able to fix for me anyways. It's really understanding why I feel the sense of urgency, what I need to fix, or maybe I want to be really validated in that moment and I'll call somebody to validate my feelings, which also kind of throws fuel on the fire a little bit too, especially if I know that maybe I'm in the wrong or maybe I've reacted in a way that I shouldn't have. I need to think about those things and process them a little more than calling someone to get them on my side. I was the queen of doing that before. And then I'm even more pumped up after the call. So I'm like, yeah, I'm right. This person agrees with me. whereas it's really not helpful for my healing process at all. So if anybody thinks of more ways to self-soothe or what they do to self-soothe, I would love to hear about this. A new one, actually, that I just heard on a podcast not long ago was the art of smell. So having a safe smell for you, so maybe it smells like eucalyptus or lavender. I'm not a fan of lavender. I don't know what it is. It doesn't soothe me at all. I don't like it. I'm very smell sensitive, so I don't know. I can't go into those stores that sell all of those bath products. It gives me a huge headache. But there are certain smells like eucalyptus, even a little bit of mint. So if you have one of those personal smells that maybe were sprayed at your yoga studio or remind you of something in the past that makes you happy, when this lady was talking about it on her podcast, I was like, that's a really great idea, because just like music is a tricky one too, though, because music can be very soothing, but also music, if you hear a triggering song, like give me any Adele song when I'm activated and I'm crying in a heartbeat. I'll even make up some scenario where this song attaches to one of my previous experiences and I'll instantly start crying. So I have to be very careful around music, but the smell one I liked, so if anybody does have one of those comforting, warm smells, give that a try. And like I said, reach out, keep sending your questions. I love them so much. I've missed you guys. I can't wait to get back and be consistent and practice what I preach. And I'll talk to you again next week. Thanks everyone for listening and supporting Living Out Loud. Be sure to tune in next week for another fun, juicy episode.